Hi everyone, Leslie Graham here. Many of you know me and know that I spent over half my career in intensive care or critical care, taking care of the most critically ill patients, either in a open heart unit where people have had bypass surgery or had their valves replaced, or in a general ICU where we've received trauma patients, patients that have experienced myocardial infarctions, patients with COPD or other ailments, as well as very complex wounds or septic patients. So I really am very excited about this course and being along this journey with you. And so Dr. Coffey has asked me to provide a story on one of those patients that sort of sticks out in my mind that really exemplifies nursing care. Great nursing care. What makes a really great critical care nurse? And so I emailed her several times back and forth. Well, what about this story? Or what about that story? Or what? And so I can think of some very compelling stories over the course of my career. Although the one that really sticks with me exemplifies the perseverance and the tenacity of a critical care nurse. And so this was a story that was provided as a keynote for the American Association of Critical Care Nurses. So I'd like you to just think about this situation. So we were in a very large conference center with 9,000 critical care nurses. Their place was as silent and you could hear pin drop. And so as we were listening to the president of the AACN deliver this story, it really touched home about what is a critical care nurse. Not only does a critical care nurse have the critical thinking and the knowledge and the skills and the compassion to take care of the most illest patients, but really it's about perseverance and tenacity. And so as she began her keynote address, she had mentioned about there had been some catastrophic events, and this was in 2013, had been some catastrophic events that occurred. And so one of the catastrophic events was a tornado that had occurred in Nebraska. And as the tornado was whipping through town, it actually took out the hospital, and so they had to evacuate to the nearest community center. So the community center then became the new triage center, and the banquet tables quickly became beds or stretchers, and the tablecloths became the turning sheets. And they called all the nurses in town as they would for Code Orange. They brought all the nurses back, all the critical care nurses, the educators, and they worked relentlessly to care for the critical care patients that they had decanted from the hospital. They were triaging fresh traumas that had come in as a result of the tornado, and they were trying to help people that had just general confusion as a result of the catastrophic event. These nurses worked over 36 hours without a break. Well, I shouldn't say without a break, but without sleep or without a proper meal. They would be grabbing a sandwich and a coffee in the back kitchen area of this community center, or they would just be handing out granola bars or whatever they needed to do. And it was sheer perseverance and tenacity that got them through this tornado. And everyone was triaged appropriately, and they got them into another ambulance and got them on to the next town or wherever they needed to go. But these nurses worked relentlessly to make this happen. Nobody said, well, my shift is over now, I got to go, or, I got to just check in on my family. They stayed for their patients. There was, of course, Katrina, Hurricane Katrina that took out New Orleans. And again, the nurses were under such extreme conditions in the intensive care unit. The hospital flooded. They had evacuated all of those that could be evacuated, but the critical care could not evacuate because they were on life support. And so these nurses stayed, and they took care of their patients. And then the electricity went. They were on backup generators. I guess the backup generators had been depleted. And so these nurses stayed, and they were bagging their patients manually. They were caring for these critically ill patients in substandard conditions. And then finally, after 5 days, that they were getting quite concerned that nobody was coming back to evacuate them. And they held out bed sheets where they had written on bed sheets, "Do not forget us." And they hung them out the window so that the helicopters would see those signs and come back and evacuate. But those nurses didn't leave their patients. They didn't abandon them for, to take care of their own family. They stayed and they took care of the most critically ill. Again, demonstrating the tenacity and the perseverance of critical care nurses. And then, and I hope I can get this without my voice cracking, this American Association of Critical Care Nurses conference, the annual conference with 9,000 critical care nurses, was held in Boston in 2013. 4 short weeks after the marathon, the Boston Marathon bombing. The city was raw, and it was palpable. As soon as I landed, the taxi driver drove me by where the bomb had been set off, and the whole town, everyone was talking about how people had been injured and how people had helped, and it was still very much traumatized by this event. And I think that Boston felt that that wouldn't be ever an issue for them. They felt almost perhaps privileged that that wouldn't be a concern, and the city had been violated. And so as they were talking about the bombers, of course, as you know, the one older brother was killed in the police gun battle, but the younger brother was able to escape and was holed up in a boat in somebody's backyard. And so when they actually went to get him, he was shot as well, but he was alive. And so when they captured him, they immediately took him to the hospital, and it was the critical care nurses who again saved his life. So there was no thought as to that this man has just killed 4 or 5 people, injured hundreds of people, paralyzed the city. They saw him as a human being that was in need of critical care assistance, and they helped save his life. And so those stories really, to me, depict the true essence of critical care nurses, the perseverance and tenacity. In addition to the expert skill and critical thinking and the compassion, those all are the attributes of a critical care nurse. And so I am so delighted to be along this journey, sharing this course with Dr. Coffey, that I can share any of my wisdom, my experience in the many years I've had in critical care. So I look forward to working with you this semester, and I'm sure that we're going to have a very great semester. We'll see everyone in class.